Hello everyone, this is RaySpace and welcome back to Realism Overhaul Sandbox in Kerbal Space Program 1.12. Recently I've been testing out SLS with the Bola boosters because they had done the physical test of the Bola booster with a nozzle issue, but otherwise it burned and didn't explode at least, so there's that. So I decided to finally put the Bola boosters to use, which are the new boosters for Block 2 of SLS, and see what they could do for us, especially if I optimize the upper stage a little bit more. But I wasn't really getting what I want. What I want is I want to be able to launch Orion and the Blue Moon lander on SLS in one go. And we don't have to have a whole bunch of assembly launches, and that's pushing it because there's a heavy combination. As Scott Manley's single launch video had said, it's about 100 tons, and that's not anywhere near the capacity of SLS. Of course, Scott Manley had proposed the dual Falcon 9 upper stage method, but that had some problems. And I would still like to use off-the-shelf components, and previously I've put the second stage of New Glenn on SLS, and I've also put the New Glenn first stage boosters on SLS. I haven't done both at the same time to figure out how much it can get us to the moon. So, well, it's not gonna be enough. It's not gonna be enough, let me put it that way. But we can take this as the first step to optimization, and we have 74 tons here, and I'm looking at the delta V, and I think that we have enough delta V. So we're going to try it out. We're going to expend these. So actually, let me just take these off. But I would like to reuse them, but we're trying to get the maximum here. We should probably leave off the landing legs, but they're built in right now. And I am going to say, and this is my old model for the New Glenn first stage, so sorry about that, but it matches this a little bit. Well, I don't know, maybe it doesn't. It might, the oranges might clash, I don't know. It's a style thing. So SLS, NG, no recovery. Lots of little initials. Alright, so let's see how this goes. I'll let Ascent Guidance handle it, because in this case, as long as we're not doing the recovery, Ascent Guidance can deal with it. So once again, we're just looking for 3,150 meters per second in orbit. And as long as we have that much, we'll call it good enough to transfer to the moon. I'm going to keep these parameters. That's fine for the booster pitch start and all. This doesn't have that much thrust weight ratio, so we might have to increase the booster pitch start, and probably the pitch rate is fine though. Alright, let's see. We barely have any thrust weight ratios here. Let me try and make it quieter. So, for those not familiar with the New Glenn first stage, it is an existing first stage. It is from Blue Origin, as it says so right on the side. And it has 7 BE4 engines. They're not as powerful as we would like them to be. However, I want to keep things within limits. My limit is we can only have boosters of 20,000 kilonewtons, because I don't think the core of SLS can take too much more stress than it is taking right now with the existing boosters. So 20,000 kilonewtons is the limit, and we can only have 2 boosters. So, because that's where it's structurally made to deal with that kind of thrust. So we have those limitations, and the BE4 festooned first stages of New Glenn are within that. We have 7 engines developing about 2,500 kilonewtons of thrust, call it. So that's about the same thrust as the peak thrust of the Bola boosters, but these are much more efficient and they'll burn longer. So that's the benefit. In fact, right now we're reading 3,400 meters per second in orbit left. We will try other arrangements, especially of the upper stage. I don't consider this the best possible upper stage, but then we're gonna have to create a new upper stage. And perhaps we'll use those Sierra Space engines. And I'll recheck the numbers on that. I understand they have to be smaller physically. I wonder why the thrust is off in this case. I mean, these have their 100% thrust. What's off? Why is there a thrust off? I thought that was a SRB issue. Huh. The New Glenn boosters are very wide compared to the original boosters of SLS, so that's a sort of asterisk. They deliberately kept the Bola boosters the same diameter, it seems. Whereas the New Glenn boosters are basically twice the diameter of the original boosters. A little bit less than twice, but pretty close. Still at least thinner than the core. But not by much. Okay, booster set. Oh, and it looks like it separated the fairings right there too. Okay, those were on separate stages, so I just decided that that would be a good time, I suppose. Well, at least we seem to be accelerating still. That's a good thing about the boosters lasting longer. We end up with a higher thrust-weight ratio with this stage once they're gone. It's not that short of orbit on this stage. It looks like we're gonna get a lot more extra. So maybe more than 74 tons, so this is looking good. One thing about the 100 tons for the combined Orion plus the Blue Moon lander is that we can underfuel the Blue Moon lander if we're going straight to low lunar orbit. The Blue Moon lander carries too much fuel as it is. It really depends on the quality of our upper stage, whether we want to do that or not, or whether we just want to use the BE-7 engines on the Blue Moon lander to do further maneuvers. Then again, because of the limited fuel in the Orion service module for capture, we might have to do the same thing I had done before, where we capture the Orion service module loose and still use the Blue Moon lander to go from a high orbit to low orbit. So we might just retain it like that. But then we need 100 tons, or close to it. Still, it's looking like we can reach orbit with 600 meters per second extra here. If it's right. Okay, staging and 2 BE-3Us. These are not the most efficient engines we could have. They're only at 444 seconds of ISP compared to the regular RL-10s on SLS with 460, so that's the efficiency, but they do have more thrust. But do we really need more thrust when we're only getting 400 meters per second necessary here? Probably not. And then the Sierra Space ones are at 465 seconds of ISP, so that's even better. The problem with the EUS is that it's just too small a stage. It's lighter than this. And so it wouldn't be able to, I mean, the SLS core stage might even get to orbit like that because it's carrying such a small upper stage when it's using those New Glenn boosters. So indeed, we're getting 600 meters per second extra, which is pretty striking considering the delta V. I aimed for 12,500 meters per second, which is 9,500 for the launch and then 3,000 for the transfer. But it looks like we need only 11,900, 8,900 for the launch. So that's a lot less. See, 12,548. Just for safety's sake, we'll just go for an even 12,000 here. We'll say 90 tons. 90 tons to lunar transfer. This is a much heavier rocket than the regular SLS. It's 3,700 tons. So that's a good 700 tons heavier, thanks to the boosters. Well, let's see if this works out. The thrust weight ratio initially is pretty darn low, so there is that. 90 tons to lunar transfer is double what Saturn V was able to do. But we do need the first stage of New Glenn to perform the way it should. And there's been questions about that. Okay, it's wiggling a bit, but we should be able to go. Just going with the same stuff. Seemed to work pretty well. Ignition. Really low thrust weight ratio. Is there some engine forcibly throttled down or something? I don't understand the whole thrust is off deal. Well, right now it's not looking like we have enough. It says 2,887, but then at this point it was saying 3,400 last time, and it ended up at 3,700. So maybe we'll gain some of that back somehow. I don't know how, but don't know how that worked. Well, we haven't gained any so far. Maybe on booster separation. Well, no, it just, well, yeah, not much. So 90 might be too optimistic. Well, I guess... Oh, well, no, it still just does the fairings like that, okay. Maybe it's the fairings. Now we have just barely enough. Well, okay, now not. 3,150 is the number that I'm going for here. We'll see. Pretty early fairing separation, admittedly, but if we wait longer, the thrust to weight ratio will be higher, so... I thought I was being a little bit conservative, trying to just go for 12,000 instead of what was suggested, which was 11,900, but it looks like it's not quite enough. Okay, staging. Still looking a bit short, but not as short as before. Well, yeah, just a little bit shy, so I can't say 90 tons. But I can say pretty close to 90 tons. And in fact, some transfers to the moon this would be fine for, but it is too tight. Certainly, by NASA standards, this would be too tight. So maybe 85 tons. In future videos, I am going to try to replace the New Glenn upper stage with some other upper stage that can get us all the way. So look out for that. But this is a promising development, I feel. We're going to be stuck with SLS, let's face it. They're not canceling SLS, and if they cancel SLS, that money is not going to other space things. They'd rather cancel all of the science stuff in NASA than cancel SLS. I think that's pretty clear right now, right? So let's just deal with this and try to put it to use, is my policy right now. Because it seems like a waste of breath trying to argue otherwise. What we want it to be is cheaper, and this would make it cheaper, right? Because the New Glenn, hopefully Blue Origin is making New Glenn cheaper than the boosters and the EUS on SLS. We'll see, but yeah, that is my policy. I think we just have to deal with reality here. So, with that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do press like. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below. And I'll see you next time.